that was the last cast. You can't always be lucky, and I need to go build some rods.
Sure.
Cool. We'll change it up and put some rings on it and keep your reel. So what we're doing, microwave guides?
Yeah.
Cool, no worries. I understand. We'll try and have it done by this time next year.
That would be great.
All right, cheers man.
Bye.
Catch you again.
Yeah, bye.
I'm Gary Benny, English rod builder living in Sweden. I've been building rods for many years, and now you're going to join me in my workshop going through tips, tricks, techniques, tools of the trade, all the things you want to know when you're coming to build a rod. We're going to drink a lot of tea, so join me on the ride. Let's have some fun. This is Rod Building. Let's do this.
Well, rod delivery. Sebastian, one of our pro staffers for American Tackle, pro staff angler, he just dropped off this rod. He loves the rod. It's a sea trout rod, a production rod that you can just buy in the shops, but it's a good one. And he loves it, but he wants to upgrade it. And he's asked me, he wants to fish with microwaves. It's his chosen guides for all of his rods. And he's asked me if I can change it up. And I actually think that's a really good one to begin with for this next video. It's not going to be an easy one. It's a painted blank, so that means we're going to have to take quite a lot of care when we're removing the whipping on there, the wrapping, should I say. I'm English, we say whipping, but Americans say wrapping. I'll keep trying to say wrapping. So I'm going to remove the wrapping, and we're going to then do a new guide placement with the microwave guides, because that is a very sort of like specific guide placement guide train to get the absolute most performance out of it. It's definitely going to make the rod lighter, that's for sure, because we're going to change out the guides and make them a lot smaller. So without further ado, let's get the tools out. With doing one of these rods, the one thing that is a little bit tricky is that you normally have to heat up the epoxy in some way, and that's to make it softer so you can get your blade through it. So the first thing to remember is always use a new sharp blade. Now this is a very new blade, so this is going to be perfect. What some people will do is they will get their burner, their heat source, and they'll heat the epoxy like that. That'll make it go soft, and then you can cut through it like a warm knife through butter. But with carbon fiber, especially painted blanks and ones that are mass produced, the problem is you don't really know what you're playing with, and you can heat that epoxy and it can start spitting and going crazy. And I've actually unfortunately had bits of like that epoxy come in my eye, so it wasn't quite good. I had to go to the hospital to get it removed. So I'm not going to be playing with that. One thing I have found to do though is a little tip for you is just heat the blade lightly instead. This is something that not a lot of people do, and it's very, very easy if you just go gently and cut where the guide foot should meet. And go careful not to burn yourself, because that blade is very hot now. And we're just going to remove it like so. We're just going to cut into the epoxy and try again just to use that tip of that blade that's hot and just remove enough epoxy so you're not going to hit the blank, and you're just going to, if you're going to go through at all, you're just going to cut into that guide foot. And it should look something like this. It's not going to look pretty. We're just going to just gently move it away. When you get like a break like that, what you can normally do is just crack it off like that. And there's our guide. And so now you can see that I've removed the guide, pretty easy. And with what we should be able to do now is get our nail in there and sort of peel back chunks of the thread, just leaving sort of like the epoxy that has gone through and adhered to the actual blank surface. That's the only thing that's left. And then we can show you a little tip of how to clean that off. So that's how I'm going to do it. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, plus this one, guys, to do. So I'm going to crack on and let's see how quickly we can clean it up. Very thick epoxy on some of these these guides from production rods, so It takes some time. They use sort of 3, 4, 5 coats sometimes just to whack it on. And the most important thing is just to really go careful, because if you start laying into it too thick and end up scratching, or even worse, cutting into the blank, it's not just a guide repair anymore. Sometimes what you can do is you can actually just grab a thread like this and you can just unwind it. But when you do that, go careful, because it can like ping off loads of epoxy pieces at you. A lot of people will do these repair jobs and you know, they'll do it pretty cheap, but if you actually look at how much time's involved to do one of these jobs properly, you're never making money. So do it for the love of it, and this is one of our pro staffers. I want to help him out. So we've got all the guides off. She's ready to clean up the blank now, but we've got the tip top left. Easiest thing with the tip top is just to apply heat to the top of the tube, and then get yourself a pair of pliers or cutters if it won't come off, and try with some, there you go. No problem at all. So cleans the whistle. Be careful, it's very hot when you're taking it off. Now it's time to get the blank ready for some new guides. Microwave guides. Let's have a look what we've got. Let's see, we've got some casting guides. We want some spinning ones. Let's have a look which ones we've got. We've got loads of microlights, airwaves. Oh, what's this? That's quite nice. We've got a new Nanolite Black Microwave 20 set there. That would be kind of perfect. Let's see what else we got. Ooh, we got some completely black new airwaves. They're pretty hot, to be honest. Oh, there is some rare stuff down here too, like some fully gold titanium samples, which are pretty cool, but they're finesse set. And I think in the sea trout fishing he's going to do, he wants a slightly bigger tip guide. So as much as that's really cool, I think we'll hold off on that one. Let's give him a titanium set. How about that? New Microwave 20 Nanolite titaniums. That's going to make the rod weigh nothing. So the good thing about microwaves is actually you get some really good recommendations for rods on the inside here when you open it up. You get your rod length, your test, first guide, second guide, and it just gives you some recommendations based on sort of average handle lengths and things like that. And on the back, this is the information that's the most important, the first 3 guides from the reel. Now, that's the guides that are gonna control the coils coming off the reel. That's the ones that are gonna really make the microwave guide perform at its best. Now, these are advisory. Personally, I have found that slightly larger reels, I will move the guide just sort of like 2 to 3% further away from the reel, and smaller sort of 2,500, 3,000 size reels, this is absolutely optimal. So you can play with it a little bit and test as a builder, but generally speaking, this has been tried and tested, so you can pretty much rely on that. Just have a look what we got in the kit here. One thing that's easy with the microwave guides is everything comes what you need. The only thing you need to add is the tip top. So we've got the Tidal Wave logo, which you get the really good quality decals there. So it's great. We've got that lovely titanium stripper. We've got the intermediate, and then we've got our running guides. Now, if you have a look at in direct comparison about what was on there, this guide here, again, nothing wrong with it. The standoff is a little bit too low for the size of the guide. So, I mean, you don't need to have such a large ring with that standoff, in my opinion. So we're not going to use that one. Then you can see the difference comparison directly. The funnel of the line is going down a lot smaller, which means that all of these guides here are going to get much smaller, and they're going to be pretty much the same as what his running guide on the top was. So there's going to be no issue with the, you know, leader knots and stuff going through. And the also benefit is you're going to get a couple more guides. So you're going to get a much nicer play in action and just a better all feel. Yeah, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 plus top, and we're going to go to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 plus top. And just for fun, I think we should weigh them. I think we should weigh the sets. Let's do it. We're going to start with this factory set, as we'll call it. Let's drop all these in. We'll chuck the tip guide in. So, I mean, that's not a heavy set of guides. 9.17 grams. That's pretty light. Let's see what we end up with the microwaves. So we're at 5 grams without a top, and just because we don't have a top here yet, but let's chuck in their top. Yeah, you see, 5.72. So I'm going to be putting on a lighter top than that as well. I'm going to put a titanium top on. you can see I'm almost halving the weight of the guides, and it's gonna cast better. So upgrade, yeah, I think so. Let's do it. So let's look at how to remove all these uglies from the blank. Now, like I said, this is a painted blank, and I've gone very careful removing the guides. And what's left over now is the actual resin. When it soaks through the thread, it adheres to the blank surface. And we want to try and remove that without scratching the painted blank. Now that is something that isn't easy to do, but there is a few tips and tricks. And the most easy way I'm going to show you is what we're going to do next. Now, just before we do that, this is what you call a standard carbon blank. And I could take a knife, and I'm not going to damage the blank, okay? Very, very hard surface. But if I was to do the underneath here is standard carbon. But it's painted on top to make it look pretty and change the color and everything. That's what I'll damage. So I'm not going to be damaging the rod if I cut into it. I'm just like scratching your car paint. It's just going to look, well, not so good. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go very careful. We're going to put the knife away for now. We might have to come back to it with some stubborn bits later. But what we're going to be doing is we're going to be picking up some rubbing alcohol, in Swedish, benzene. So we're going to use some of this, and what we're going to do is we're going to dip some of our thread in it, like a D grade or whatever thread, and we're going to put it on the power wrapper, and we're going to rub that just gently up and down over, and that's going to soften up that epoxy, and fingers crossed, it's going to make it easy to remove. Let's get a little bit like that in a little pot. And we get some D grade thread, and double it over, and I'm going to dip it into that alcohol down there, get a bit soaked in, and then very simply what we're going to do is we're going to lay it over the area, and we're going to just go up and down, and you'll start to see already the thread is going like white where it's slowly removing the epoxy. Now this takes a little bit of time, and what you don't want to do is you don't want to heat up that area too much, because then you're going to heat the paint, so you're going to do more damage again. Take it easy, wait a little bit. You know, I can see it's already polishing it off nicely. We'll go back in again. And I'm gonna go over, and you'll see that that is just dusting up a little bit. And it's getting there nicely. It's gonna take some time, but it's getting there. So just keep dipping, soaking it in, laying it over, and then back again, keeping the thread tight, back and forth, and you'll see what it's starting to do is it's starting to polish down the blank, and it's starting to remove that nasty epoxy. And after a while, you can maybe get your nail on there and start removing it. Everything that's on is on the surface of the paint there, so you can just, if there's some big stuff, like I said before, you can get your knife. If you feel it with a thread, like really like jumping over it, then it's too big for the thread to sort of remove. It's too hard. So just get your knife, and with a sharp blade flat against just gently kind of rub and see if you can just pick off those high spots really, and just remove it away, like so. And then back to it, dip it in, and then up and down. And you'll see that the thread will keep going like white where it's removing. And I know what you're thinking, it's taking forever, and it is. But unfortunately, that's like I said to you at the start, the time it takes to do a job like this properly, there's no money in the world that's really worth it. But yeah, it's fun, like making a rod better. So that's pretty clean. You know, we're gonna work on that a little bit longer and try and get it really buffed up. There's a time, I can feel with my nail if I do it, you can see it's just coming a bit of white dust, and that's the resin. So I'm going to work on that for sort of another couple minutes and just see if I can really get it completely clean. And then I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 others to do. So catch you in a bit. I'm going to crack on. Okay, so we've cleaned up the blank as best we can, and it came out pretty good. It took a lot of time, but yeah, that's the way it goes. Now, you're never gonna get it really, really like new, because it isn't, but The thing about the microwave guides is their strategic placement means, you know, you can't just whack them on where the old guides were. We could do that, but it's not really optimal. I've spoke to Sebastian, he's more than happy with the small little marks if you look really close where the old guides were. So we're cool to go ahead. Now the first thing we need to do is work out exactly where the guides are going to go. And like I said before, the first three guides, the stripper, the transition and the runner, they're the ones that are crucial for this placement. So we're going to work those out, and Sebastian told me he's going to be using a 2,500 size reel. And so I've just picked one up, I'm going to put it on the rod, and we're going to work out where the guides need to go. Now, the way you do this with the microwave guides is very simple, is you want to extend the spool to its highest point, like so. And then we've got from the stripping guide, from the lip of the spool, extend to its furthest point forward to the primary ring of the stripping guide. So it's 49.53. So all we're going to do is we're going to get our measure and we're going to work out 49.53 from the lip of the spool. Now I tend to do from the center of the spool because I think that's easier and it's worked very good for me. And I'm going to measure it down, and we're coming in about there. Let me just get that straight. It's a little bit tricky. Let's move this one out of the way. So we want 49.53, and the lip is roughly 3 mil. So we'll go 49.5 there. And there we have it. So there is our first guide mark. Right there. After that one, we can pretty much take away the reel, but what we do want to do is then the next guide needs to be 77.47 from the same spot. We'll make sure that the reel is fully extended, like so, and we want 77.47. So we'll move it like so. 77.47 is up there. So there's our first two guide marks, and then our last one is 102.28. So that's quite a long one, so we need to move this one again. Right, like so. 101.28 is there. Okay, so now we've got our first three crucial guide markings. Those ones now we need to put in position, and the rest of the running guides we're going to work on deflection. So we've got the microwave guides on, we've got the stripper guide on, the intermediate and the first running guide, and that is basically the setup, what you need. From there on, there's two ways of doing it. You can do a deflection test, which is where you're going to sort of put the guide on a deflection board and you're going to run a line through it and basically see the arc of the rod and where the guides need to go. For a spinning rod, you're basically, after these first three guides, you're going to space them evenly up through the rest of the tip, so you don't get too much splice. The splice is how the acute line angle from each guide to each guide. The more the rod's going to bend, the more guide you should really have to reduce that splice. And that's what the deflection board's really going to do. If, like me, you've built a lot of rods, you already know pretty much based on the action and power and the length, your guide spacing. So I'm not going to need to touch the deflection board. I'm just going to be able to space them out based on what I know, whip them up, and the rod's going to be ready to go. So I'm going to quickly whip up the tip section, and this rod is then finished. We'll have a look at the final result in a minute. It's looking pretty cool. The tip's all wrapped up, the butt's wrapped up, microwave titanium throughout the whole rod, and it's looking phenomenal. It's light, it's crisp, the guides really suit the rod, and it's going to cast like an absolute dream. So I think he's going to be over the moon, to be honest. We've only one last thing to do, and we're going to put some epoxy on and finish it up. It's going to take a little bit while to do, so unfortunately I'm not going to have time to show you that, but we're going to start doing a bit of epoxy and get this rod finished for the evening. Well, that's looking absolutely awesome. The epoxy's going to be turning nice and clear. The bubbles are all coming out. touch it with a little bit more heat. There we go. So the rod is now finished, and I don't think Sebastian's going to believe his eyes when he sees his new rod with the microwave line control system. But one thing's for sure, he's definitely going to feel it with his first cast with those new titanium guides. The rod's super lightweight, it's a performance upgrade, and it's going to make a really big difference. Obviously, we went through all the aspects of taking the guides off of the rod and what to think about when putting a new guide train on a rod. Then we talked about the little key things about taking away the epoxy off the finish of the blank and doing a new rewrap and making it look absolutely perfect and finished. So from me today, this is RodBuilding, and that was a wrap.